A father doesn't raise his voice when he's angry, he goes quiet. And on the day my own son told me he wished I'd never existed, I didn't yell either. I just stood up, put my fork down, and gave him exactly what he asked for. Father's Day, Brentwood, Tennessee. 68 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. And my wife Helen had the good china out on the back patio, like we were hosting the governor instead of eating brisket in our own backyard. I run 3 car dealerships across Nashville, built the whole thing from a single used car lot my own father couldn't afford to leave me. 29 years of 6 a.m. mornings so my son Ben could grow up in a house with a pool instead of a window unit that rattled all summer. You'd think that buys you something. A little respect, maybe. Turns out it buys you a Father's Day where your kid tells you he wishes you were never born into his life. I'd spent the morning the way I spend every Sunday, up before Helen, coffee on the back porch, watching the sprinklers hit the same 4 rose bushes in the same order they always do. Helen came out around 8 in her robe, kissed the top of my head, and said, "Try not to lecture him today, Arthur. It's his one day to relax." When have I ever lectured that boy? She gave me the look. 29 years of marriage, that woman has one look that does the work of 1,000 arguments. Yesterday, about the truck payment. That wasn't a lecture, that was math. It's Father's Day. Let the math rest. I promised her I would. Should have known better than to make a promise about Ben before Ben himself had a say in it. Welcome to Dad's Raw Revenge. Get comfortable. And keep this in mind. The people in this story had every chance to do right. They just chose otherwise. Hit that like button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Trust me, you're gonna love it here. Ben showed up late. Of course he did, with Lisa hanging off his arm like she'd personally rented him for the afternoon. Pretty girl. Sharp, too, in the way that makes you count your silverware after she leaves. 8 months they'd been together, and in 8 months I'd learned exactly one thing about her. She never once asked me a question about myself. Not how's the business, Arthur. Not how'd you build all this. Just watched. Calculated. Like she was pricing out the furniture. Dad. Ben kissed his mother. Clapped me on the shoulder like we were fraternity brothers. Good spread. Your mother did it, I said. I just paid for the brisket. Lisa laughed at that a half-second too late, like she was translating it from a language she didn't quite speak. We got through the meal fine, at first. Small talk. Helen bragging about her book club, me half listening while I watched Ben check his phone under the table 4 separate times. Lisa kept steering the conversation. Asked Helen about the roses, asked about our trip to Destin last spring. Easy stuff, warm stuff. I'll give her that, she's good at warm. It's just never aimed at me. At one point she caught me watching her and smiled. You've got a beautiful home, Arthur. Ben talks about growing up here like it was something out of a movie. It wasn't a movie, I said. It was a lot of overtime. Dad. Ben half laughing, half warning. Let her compliment the house. I'm agreeing with her. It is beautiful. Took me 11 years to pay it off. Something's coming. I could feel it the way you feel weather changing in your knee. Ben checked his phone again. Lisa reached over and put her hand flat on his forearm. Not affectionate, more like she was steadying a table with a wobbly leg. Dessert hit the table, and Ben cleared his throat the way he used to when he was 9 years old and about to tell me he'd wrecked the golf cart. So, Dad, I wanted to talk to you about something. Lisa and I, we've got an opportunity. There it is. What kind of opportunity? A real estate thing. Her friends group, they're flipping short-term rentals down in the Gulf Shores market. Insane returns, Dad. Like insane. We just need capital to get in on the next round. How much capital? Ben looked at Lisa. Lisa looked at her wine glass. 240,000, Ben said. We'd need you to cover 60% of our buy-in. I didn't say anything for a second, just sat there letting the number breathe. $240,000, I repeated, for a rental flip you heard about from her friend. Not her friend. Dad, an actual group. They've got a track record. Does the group have a name? Coastal Vista Holdings, Lisa said, jumping in smooth as anything. They've closed 4 properties already this year. My friend Michelle's been in since January. She's already seen a return. Michelle. Does Michelle have a last name? Arthur, Helen said quietly, a hand already drifting toward my knee. I'm asking a question. It's a fair question. 4 properties. No LLC filing I'd recognize. No license number. Nothing but a name that sounds like it was built in an afternoon by somebody who watched one too many HGTV marathons. I'd already spent a week quietly making calls after Ben first mentioned this thing to his mother. 2 Sundays back. Helen doesn't know I checked. Nobody asked me to check. That's just what 30 years of getting burned teaches a man to do before he ever says yes to anything. Ben, I did some digging on this. His face changed. Just like that. You did what? He shot a look at his mother. Quick, sharp, the kind that says, why would you tell him so fast before he'd even worked out, if that's what happened? Helen didn't flinch, just met his eyes steady, like she'd expected that look and had already made her peace with it. Yes, I did, I said. Your mom told me. 2 Sundays back when you first mentioned it to her. You didn't think she'd keep something like $250,000 ask to herself, did you? Mom, don't mom her, I said. She's your mother, not your business partner. She was worried, so she told me. That's what happens in this family when somebody's about to make a mistake. The people who love you talk to each other. I made a few calls. This group isn't registered with the state. No broker's license under that name. No permits filed on the 2 addresses you mentioned to your mother. Son, this has every mark of. Here we go again. Let me finish. No, I know how this ends, Dad. I've heard the speech my whole life. You did your calls, you found your reasons, and now you're going to tell me why I can't do the one thing I actually believe in. I'm telling you it's not real, Ben. That's not an opinion. That's a fact I verified. It's always something with you. His voice cracked up a register, and Helen's hand found my knee under the table. A warning squeeze. Anytime I try to build something, you've got a spreadsheet ready to shoot it down. The business degree, not the right school. The engagement with Whitney, too young. Every single time you've got the right answer, and I'm just supposed to sit there and nod like I don't have a brain in my head. I'm trying to protect you from. You're trying to control me. He was standing, now Lisa's hand on his arm, not pulling him back, pushing him forward. If I'm being honest, though, I wouldn't understand that till later. You don't believe in me. You've never believed in me. You think I'm still 9 years old wrecking the golf cart, and I am so sick of it. That's not fair, I said, and for the first time all afternoon I felt my own voice tighten. I have believed in you since the day you were born. Believing in you and handing you $250,000 without a single document to back it up are two different things. See, that's the problem. Everything's a document to you. Everything's a spreadsheet. You can't just trust me. Trust isn't the issue, Ben. Coastal Vista Holdings is the issue. Ben. Helen's voice, soft, pleading. Honey, sit down. Let's finish dessert and talk about this later, calmly. No, Mom. I'm done. He turned back to me and his eyes were wet. And for 1 second, just one, I thought he was going to say something that would let us both walk this back. Instead, you know what? I wish you'd never been my dad. I wish I'd had a father who actually let me live. 26 years. Every recital, every scraped knee, every 3 a.m. run to the ER when he broke his arm falling off the shed roof. Every dollar, every ounce of it. And this is the receipt he hands me. The backyard went dead silent. Even the birds seemed to shut up. Helen's hand tightened on my knee like she could hold the whole thing together through sheer grip strength. Lisa didn't say a word, just watched, and I remember thinking even then, why isn't she embarrassed? Why does she look like she's waiting for something? I stood up slow, folded my napkin, set it on the table next to a piece of pie nobody was going to finish now. Then live as if you never had one, I said. Not loud. Didn't need to be loud. Some sentences land harder in a whisper than a scream, and I watched that one land on my son's face like a slap he didn't see coming. Dad, for a second the anger dropped out of him, and he sounded 12 years old again. Dad, wait. I didn't wait. I walked past him, past Lisa's wide eyes, past Helen calling my name in a voice I hadn't heard since her own father's funeral. Out through the side gate into the driveway, where the Porsche sat gleaming in the June sun. The car Ben had been driving for the better part of a year, the car with the dealership's name still on the registration, because I'd never gotten around to signing it over, because I kept waiting for him to earn it instead of just take it. Funny how a man can wait 26 years for his son to ask him a real question and get his answer on Father's Day instead. The one day designed to remind you it was all worth it. I got in, turned the key, didn't look back at the house. My phone buzzed before I'd made it 2 blocks. Ben, bring my car back or I'm calling the cops. My car. I read it twice, sitting at a red light on Franklin Road, with my hand steady on the wheel and something cold settling into my chest that wasn't quite anger anymore. It was something calmer than that, something that had been building for longer than one bad dinner. A second text came through right behind it. I mean it, Dad. I'm not playing. I typed back 4 words and set the phone face down on the passenger seat. It was never yours. The light turned green. I drove past the Franklin Road exit I'd have normally taken home, past the dealership lit up gold in the late afternoon sun, out toward the highway, with no real destination in mind, just distance, just quiet, just the sound of a German engine doing the one thing my own son couldn't manage all day, running smooth without a fight. And somewhere behind me in a backyard full of good china and half-eaten pie, my son was about to learn exactly how far a man will go when he's finally done being told he's the problem. The first thing you learn when you build a business from nothing is that quiet is the loudest sound in the world when you're the one causing it. I've fired men with a phone call shorter than the one my son didn't get from me that night. I drove for 2 hours with no destination and ended up, of all places, at the dealership on Franklin Pike. My flagship lot, closed for the holiday, lights off except the security floods buzzing over rows of cars nobody was buying on a Sunday. I parked the Porsche in its usual spot, under the awning by the service bay, and sat there in the driver's seat until the automatic lights shut off around me, and I was just a man in the dark, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. 26 years and it comes down to 4 words on a phone screen. My car. Like I hadn't bought the thing outright. Like I hadn't put his name on nothing. Helen called 9 times before midnight. I let 4 of them go to voicemail before I picked up, because a man needs at least one night to be angry without an audience, even his own wife. Arthur James, you get home right now, she said. No hello, straight into it. He's a mess. He's sitting on the porch steps like somebody died. Somebody didn't die, Helen. Somebody got told the truth. You didn't have to say it like that. I said it exactly how I meant it. My voice was calm. Too calm, probably, for a man whose son had just wished him out of existence in front of a woman none of us trusted. He wants to live like he never had a father, Helen. I'm just giving him the room to try. Silence on the line. Then quieter. He didn't mean it. He meant it enough to say it in front of Lisa. In front of you. On Father's Day, no less. Real thoughtful timing on his part. Are you coming home? Tomorrow, I said, and hung up before she could talk me out of the one night of distance I'd earned in 29 years of never taking one. I didn't sleep in the car, for the record. I'm 58. Not a fool. Checked into the Marriott off Cool Springs Boulevard, ordered a club sandwich from room service I didn't touch, and lay there staring at a ceiling fan that didn't spin, running the whole dinner back like game film. Coastal Vista Holdings. Michelle, no last name. $250,000 for 4 rental flips nobody could produce a deed for. He's not stupid. My son is not a stupid man, which means somebody worked very hard to make him stop thinking like one. By 7 the next morning, my phone had 14 new messages. Ben, mostly. I read them over coffee I didn't taste. Dad, you can't just take my car. This is insane, you know that, right? Mom said you're at a hotel. Real mature. I called the police. They're coming to the house. You want to explain that to them, or should I? Bring it on, son. Bring every squad car in Williamson County if it makes you feel like a man this morning. I drove home around 9, straight into a driveway with an actual patrol car parked in it. Lights off, thank God. But still, a cruiser in my driveway on a Monday morning like I was running a chop shop instead of 3 legitimate dealerships with my name on the sign. Ben was on the porch talking to a young officer, arms crossed, looking like he hadn't slept either. Lisa was nowhere in sight. First smart move she'd made all weekend, staying clear of this. There he is, Ben said when I got out of the Porsche, and something ugly flickered across his face, relief and rage fighting for the same real estate. That's my car, officer. That's the car I've been driving for a year. The officer, Hendricks, according to the name tag, couldn't have been older than 30, looked at me, then back at Ben, with the particular patience of a man who had already figured out how this was going to go. Sir, is this vehicle registered to you? It's registered to Arthur James Auto Group, I said, and pulled the registration out of the glove box before he even had to ask, because I'd grabbed it the night before knowing exactly where this was headed. I'm Arthur James. It's a company vehicle. My son's been driving it as a courtesy while he worked at the dealership. I don't work there anymore, Dad. I quit in March, which is when the courtesy should have ended, I said, but I let it slide. My mistake, apparently. Hendricks looked over the registration, looked at Ben, looked at me, and you could watch the whole situation deflate in real time on his face. Son, if the vehicle's titled to the business, and your father's the owner of the business, there's no theft here. This is a civil matter, family matter. I can't do anything with this. He just took it, Ben said, and his voice cracked in a way that used to break my heart when he was 7 and it was a scraped knee causing it. Now it just made my jaw tighter. In the middle of a fight, he just drove off. Sir, Hendricks gently but firmly closing his notepad. I understand you're upset, but I can't take a report on a vehicle you don't own. He nodded to me, professional, a little apologetic, the universal cop look for sorry you had to see your kid do this, and walked back to his cruiser. Neither of us said anything until the patrol car turned out of the cul-de-sac. Then Ben looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since he was 16, and I caught him lying about where he'd actually wrecked his first truck. You humiliated me, he said. You called the police on your own father over a company car, Ben. I didn't do that. You did that. Because you stole it. I drove my own vehicle away from a table, where my own son told me he wished I'd never existed. Forgive me if I didn't stick around to hand you the keys on my way out. He didn't have an answer for that. Just stood there on the porch, fists opening and closing at his sides. And for 1 second, one single second, I thought maybe this was the bottom. Maybe this was where it turned around. Then his phone buzzed. He looked down at it, and whatever color was left in his face drained straight out. What? I said. Nothing. Ben. He turned the phone around, more out of instinct than choice, I think, The way you show somebody a wound before you've even processed your bleeding. A text from Lisa. Call me. Michelle says the closing got pushed. Something's off with the escrow account. There it is. I'd been waiting 3 days for that particular shoe to drop, ever since I made the calls Ben didn't know about. One to a title company in Baldwin County, Alabama. One to an old friend who works fraud cases for the state attorney general's office. I hadn't told Ben what I found. I hadn't needed to. Some lessons cost more when you have to pay for them yourself. What's wrong? I asked, keeping my voice level, keeping it neutral, because the second I sounded like I told you so, he'd shut down completely, and I'd learned that about my son a long, long time ago. It's nothing. It's probably just paperwork. Ben, I already sent them the money. Okay? It burst out of him like something that had been pressurized for days. Not all of it. But my part, my 60 grand, I sent it Thursday, before any of this. There it is. There's the whole thing, laid out plain as day. $60,000. Money I happen to know for a fact he didn't have sitting free in a checking account, which meant he'd either drained his savings, hit a credit line, or done something dumber. I didn't ask which. Not yet. A man has to let the floor finish falling before he starts asking what's underneath it. And your girlfriend's friend, Michelle, she's saying the account's got a problem. It's probably nothing. Ben, I need you to hear me, and I need you to actually hear it this time, not just wait for me to stop talking. I stepped closer, and my voice dropped the way it does in a boardroom when the number on the page isn't the number I was told to expect. I checked, days ago. Coastal Vista Holdings doesn't exist as a licensed entity in the state of Alabama. The properties Lisa mentioned, the ones her friend supposedly closed on, don't have permits filed, don't have deeds recorded, don't have anything. It's a shell. It was always a shell. He went white. Actually white, like the blood left his face on a countdown. How long have you known that? Since before Father's Day? And you didn't tell me? You just let me sit there and you humiliated me at dinner instead of just telling me. I tried to tell you at dinner, Ben. That's the whole reason we're standing in this driveway right now. Because I tried. And you told me you wished I'd never been your father for the crime of trying to keep you from doing exactly what you just did anyway. Silence. Real silence. The kind that has weight to it. The kind you could set a hand on. His phone buzzed again. He didn't look at it this time. Just stood there staring at the concrete like it might open up and take him somewhere better than where he currently was standing. Where's Lisa? I asked, quieter now. I don't know. She stopped answering an hour ago. Of course she did. I didn't say it out loud. Didn't need to. I watched my son do the math himself, standing in that driveway in yesterday's clothes. And I want to tell you it felt like a victory. It didn't. It felt like watching a man drown 3 feet from shore and knowing that if I jumped in too soon, he'd never learn to swim at all. I'm going inside, I said. Your mother's worried sick and I haven't slept in a proper bed. Dad. His voice cracked again. Smaller this time. What do I do? I stopped at the door, didn't turn around right away. Some part of me, the part that had built 3 dealerships out of one dying used car lot, wanted to walk back and fix it, the way I'd fixed everything since the day he was born. You wanted to live like you never had a father, I said instead. Figure it out like one. I went inside and let the screen door shut behind me, and I didn't look back to see his face, because I already knew what it looked like, and some things a man can't afford to watch twice in one lifetime. If you have been listening for a while, drop your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button while you're at it, and be sure you're subscribed. Revenge doesn't always look like fire and fury. Sometimes it looks like a man doing absolutely nothing while the truth finishes the job for him. And let me tell you, watching my own son fall apart taught me nothing has ever felt so satisfying, and nothing has ever cost me more to sit through. 3 days after the police showed up in my driveway, Ben started calling. I let it ring out. 4 calls the first day, 7 the second, and by the 3rd day the calls stopped and the text started instead. Long, rambling, the kind a man sends at 2 in the morning when his pride has finally run out of gas. Dad, I really need to talk to you. The escrow account was fake. Lisa's gone. I think I lost everything. Please just call me back. I didn't. Helen thought I was being cruel. Maybe I was. But I'd spent 26 years catching that boy before he hit the ground, and some part of me, the cold practical part that built 3 dealerships out of one dying lot, had decided he needed to feel the ground for once, before I let him back up. He showed up at the dealership on the 5th day. Not the office, the lot, out front standing by the service bay in the same rumpled shirt like he hadn't changed since Thursday. My sales manager, Greg, poked his head into my office. Your son's out there, Arthur. Been standing by the entrance for 20 minutes. Didn't want to come in without asking. Didn't want to come in without asking. There's a first. I made him wait another 10 minutes before I walked out. Petty, maybe. I'd earned a little petty. Dad. He looked wrecked. Not dramatic wrecked, real wrecked. The kind of tired that sits behind the eyes. I need to talk to you. You're talking. Is there somewhere private? This is where I work, Ben. If you've got something to say it here. Same as anybody else who walks onto this lot with a problem. That landed the way I meant it to. He flinched, but he didn't leave. The money's gone. All of it. 60 grand, my whole savings, and I had to put the rest on a credit card because Lisa said the closing needed a rush fee. How much more? 11,000. He said it so quiet I almost missed it. On top of the 60. $70,000, Dad, and there's nothing. No property, no group, no Michelle. Her number's disconnected. Lisa's disappeared completely. I let the silence sit there. Didn't rush to fill it. A younger version of me would have already been reaching for my wallet, but I'd learned something in the 5 days since that dinner. The silence does more work than I ever could. I don't know what to do, he said, and his voice cracked wide open. I can't make rent this month. I put too much on that card. I'm maxed. Dad, I'm asking you for help. I'm asking you. You told me you wished I'd never been your father. I know. You called the police on me. In my own driveway. Over a car with my company's name on the title. I know, Dad. I know, and I was wrong. I was so wrong. But I'm asking you to help me now. Please. No, I said. He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. What? No. I'm not bailing you out. I kept my voice level. Kept it even, though it cost me something to do it. You wanted to live like you never had a father. Fathers don't hand their sons $71,000 to clean up a mess a con artist and her boyfriend, her Mark, made together. You want to live without me. Live without me. Figure out the rent. Figure out the card. Figure out all of it. Dad, please. His voice broke fully now, and he wasn't performing it, I could see that much. I'll lose the apartment. I don't have anywhere to go. Your mother's spare room is still made up, I said. That's the extent of what you're getting from this family right now. A bed and a warm meal. Not a check. This is just for a short time, so fix yourself quickly. He went home to Helen that night. That day I stayed late at the dealership doing paperwork I didn't need to do. I wasn't ready to watch my son sleep in his childhood bedroom like a man twice his age who'd run out of road. But he has no choice. He moved back into the house, got served a notice from his old landlord over the broken lease, sold his watch, a decent one, a graduation gift from his grandfather, to cover half the credit card minimum, took a job waiting tables at a steakhouse off Cool Springs because nothing else was hiring fast enough, and I'd walk past him some mornings in the kitchen, still in his black work polo, looking like a man who used to believe the world owed him something and had very recently learned otherwise. He didn't ask me for money again. Not once. That's the part that started to matter to me more than anything he could have said. Helen pushed, of course. He's suffering enough, Arthur. How long is this going to go on? Until I believe it. I told her. Not until I forgive him. Until I believe him. 3 weeks in, I found him in the garage on a Sunday night, going through a shoebox of old paperwork. His half-finished business plan for the rental scheme, printouts of texts with Lisa, a legal pad full of numbers that didn't add up even when he'd wanted them to. He didn't hear me come in. You keeping that for a reason, I said. He jumped, then set the box down like it was something shameful. I don't know. Reminder, maybe, of what an idiot looks like on paper. $71,000 gone, he said, flat, like he'd rehearsed saying it plainly so it wouldn't crack his voice. It cracked anyway. The escrow account. It wasn't even a real escrow account. It was just Michelle's personal checking. There's no Coastal Vista Holdings. There's no properties. There's nothing, Dad. It's just gone. I know, I said. I've known for a week. You could have stopped me. I tried to stop you at my own dinner table, Ben, and you told me you wished I'd never been born into your life for the effort. I finally set the paperwork down. I'm not going to apologize for being right about a thing I begged you to reconsider. He flinched like I'd hit him, but he didn't argue. That, more than anything, told me how far the floor had actually dropped out from under him. Where's Lisa? I asked. Gone. Ghosted. Blocked me on everything. Her apartment's cleared out. I went by yesterday. The landlord said she broke lease 2 weeks ago. His hands were shaking a little, and I watched him press them flat against his knees to still them. 2 weeks ago, Dad. Before we even asked you for the money. She knew. She knew this whole time, and she still had me sit at your table and beg you for 60% of a scam. There it is. The whole shape of it, laid out plain in my own son's voice. I'd suspected as much the moment I saw her hand on his arm at dinner, steadying him like a table leg instead of comforting him like a man she loved. But suspicion and confirmation are two very different meals, and I could see my son was finally choking down the second one. I made some calls Thursday, I said, after you told me about the escrow account. I've got a friend, Roger Bell, works fraud cases for the Tennessee Attorney General's office. We go back to my second dealership back before you were born. I asked him to look into Michelle Voss and this whole Coastal Vista operation. Ben's head came up, and it's not her first rodeo. Roger found 2 other names, 2 other cities, Chattanooga 18 months back, and before that, somewhere outside Birmingham. Same play every time. Fake real estate group, fake urgency, always aimed at young couples with access to family money they didn't earn themselves. I let that sentence sit there a second, watching it land. Your girlfriend wasn't unlucky, Ben. She was the front door. She gets a finder's fee for every mark she walks in. The color that drained out of Ben's face on the porch 3 days earlier didn't have anywhere left to go, so this time it just froze there. Lisa was. She was working with Michelle the whole time? Roger's still confirming the finances, but the pattern doesn't lie. Girlfriend meets a man with money behind him. Girlfriend plants the opportunity, pushes hard, applies just enough pressure that the boyfriend goes to daddy for the funding. Money moves, girlfriend disappears with her cut before anybody thinks to ask where she went. I shrugged, and it wasn't a warm gesture. You weren't the target, son. You were the vehicle. Ben put his face in his hands. Didn't cry, not exactly, but close enough that I looked away and let him have that much privacy in my own office. I feel like an idiot, he said muffled. You're 26, and you fell for somebody who was very, very good at her job. I paused. But I'll say this once, and then I'm done saying it. Every single thing I tried to warn you about, going back years, wasn't me trying to keep you small. It was me trying to keep you from exactly this chair, exactly this conversation. He looked up. Why didn't you just tell me all this? At dinner? Why'd you let me humiliate myself calling the cops on you instead of just laying it all out? Fair question. Best one he'd asked me in months. Because you weren't going to believe a word I said at that table, Ben. You'd already decided I was too controlling. Sometimes a man has to let you hit the wall yourself, because he's tried steering you around it for 26 years, and you keep grabbing the wheel back. I'm so sorry, Dad. I said hurtful things to you. I lost $71,000 to a woman who was using me from day one. I moved back into my childhood bedroom at 26. I didn't answer right away. Watched him sit there in the garage light, surrounded by the wreckage of his own certainty, and for the first time in 3 weeks I let myself actually feel it. Not the anger, that had mostly burned off by then, but something closer to grief. This is my son. This is what it cost him to stop being so sure of everything. You're not getting your 71,000 back, son. I want to be straight with you about that, but you're not the last name on that list, and you won't be adding any more names to it, because it's over. He put his face in his hands, and this time he actually cried. Not the near tears from the office, 5 days after everything, but the real thing, shoulders shaking. 3 weeks of waiting tables and sleeping in a room with his high school trophy still on the shelf, finally breaking loose all at once. I let him. Didn't rush over, didn't say anything soft too early. Some things a man has to finish crying through before comfort means anything. When he settled, I sat down on the step next to him. I've got something to tell you, I said, and I need you to actually hear it this time, all the way through, before you say anything back. He nodded, wiped his face. Back in February, before any of this, I started making papers drawn up to transfer the Porsche's title to you outright. Birthday present, 6 months early. It's been sitting in my desk drawer this whole time. I watched that land on him, watched the shame cut a little deeper before I kept going. There's also a trust, $200,000, been building since you turned 18. Meant to help you start something real when you were ready. Not a scheme, something legitimate, with a business plan that could survive somebody actually checking the paperwork. You had all that, he said slowly. The whole time I was begging you at the dinner table. The whole time I was living in your house, sleeping under a Little League trophy. I did. Why didn't you just give it to me? Any of the last 3 weeks, why'd you let me sell Grandpa's watch instead of just... Because a man who hands his son everything the second he cries doesn't teach him anything except that crying works, I said. I needed to know you weren't sorry because you got caught, Ben. I needed to know you were sorry because you understood what you did. To yourself, to your mother, to me. 3 weeks of waiting tables and an empty bank account taught you that a lot better than a check from me would have. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just sat there letting it settle. I'm not giving you the trust today, I added, before he could get his hopes up wrong. It's still there, it's still yours, but it comes with conditions now. A real business plan, one I get to look at. One that has to survive me picking it apart the way I should have been allowed to pick apart Coastal Vista Holdings before you signed away $71,000 to a woman who never once asked me a real question at my own dinner table. That's fair, he said, and meant it in a way he hadn't meant much of anything in 3 weeks. That's more than fair. A man doesn't get his inheritance back the day he stops crying. He gets it back the day he's earned the right to be trusted with it again. He nodded, and for the first time in 3 weeks he almost smiled. Not because it was easy, but because it was honest. And honest was more than he'd had in a long time. Some men win by taking things away. I've found, at 58 years old, there's a sharper kind of winning in making a man earn back what you were always going to give him anyway, and watching him learn, the hard and expensive way, that the ground he thought he could stand on without me was never really there at all. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from. I will see you on the next one.